Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 39. Entry into the Realm of Reality. Video 33. Then the prince, having entered the park, said to the maid in the presence of her mother, I have set out for supreme perfect enlightenment, whereby I may gather the infinite stores of omniscience, cultivate the practice of enlightening beings for infinite eons, and perfect all the transcendent ways, serve the Buddhas for endless eons, uphold the teaching of all Buddhas, purify all Buddha lands, perpetuate the lineages of all Buddhas, develop all groups of sentient beings to maturity, stop the pains of the mundane world for all sentient beings, lead sentient beings to ultimate bliss, clarify the eye of knowledge in all sentient beings, strive for the attainments of all Buddhas and enlightening beings, abide in the equanimity of all enlightening beings, accomplish all the stages of enlightening beings, purify all sentient beings, cultivate total giving to put an end to poverty for all sentient beings, practice transcendent giving for endless eons, and satisfy all sentient beings with gifts of food and drink, and satisfy all beggars by giving away all goods. As I practice total relinquishment, everything internal and external is to be given away. I am to give away my sons, daughters, wife. I am to relinquish my eyes, head, hands and feet, all my limbs. You will hinder my giving, you will become unhappy at the relinquishment of beloved children, you will feel much physical and mental pain, you will resent my determination to give up everything. When I cut off my limbs to give them to beggars, you will be pained and grieved. And there will come a time when I leave you to go forth into the tutelage of a Buddha. At that time you will be unhappy. Then the prince spoke these verses to the maid. I am going to fulfill the immeasurable ocean of provisions for perfect enlightenment. Therefore, with compassion for all, I have set forth forever for enlightenment. For infinite eons, measureless as air, I will purify my vow. For endless eons I will perform the preparations of the initial stage of the Buddhas. I will learn the paths of transcendence from the Buddhas of past, present, and future, and perfect the path of supreme enlightenment by the great means of unexcelled knowledge. I will purify all defiled lands everywhere. I will remove all difficulties and evil ways from all worlds. I will purify all beings who are wrapped up in afflictions, blind with delusion. Developing them by various means, I will bring them into the path of omniscience. I will accomplish the unobstructed stages and serve the Buddhas for myriad eons. Generating kindness toward the world, I will give all gifts. As I am engaged in giving all to beggars who come, do not become depressed or sad or unsympathetic. Seeing benefit for one who wants my head, a wise person would delight in lofty conduct. You would be tormented, so hear my purpose and become firm. You would be grieved at my giving my severed hands and feet to beggars and speak bitterly, faint and distressed. So hear my purpose and think about it. I will give away my prized possessions, even my children, yet I want you. Hear my aim, and if you do not despair, all shall be as you wish. The maid replied to the prince, let it be as you say. I will do as you wish. I am at your service, and will accompany you wherever you want to go. I will always stay with you and be diligent in all tasks. I will behave as you wish. I will exert myself properly and act in harmony with you. Then she spoke these verses to the prince. Even if my body should be burned to death in the fires of hell, I would endure it for myriad lifetimes as your companion in practice. Even if life after life for endless lives my body were cut asunder, I would endure it with a steadfast mind if you were my husband. Even if the mountains should crush my head for endless ages, I would endure it unfazed if you became my husband. In infinite lifetimes you may cut off your own limbs and give them to others. Lead me to control of my thoughts and make me firm in my duty. I give you my body completely, O Prince of Men. Performing spiritual practice for myriad ages, give me to whoever wants me, and I will be happy. You have set out for supreme enlightenment, with infinite compassion for beings. Having taken all beings into your care, take me in too with compassion. It is not for enjoyment or wealth or sensual pleasure that I want you, best of men, for my husband, but to share the same spiritual practice. You look upon all beings with clear eyes and kind heart. Being compassionate with undefiled mind, you will surely become a king of sages. As you walk along, a jewel-like glow from your footsteps remains on the earth, pure. Endowed with the marks of greatness, you will surely become a sovereign king in the human world. In a dream I saw the enlightenment site illumined by clouds of true teaching in this kingdom, with the Buddha sitting at the foot of the best of trees, in the company of many enlightening beings. That exalted Buddha Supreme Sun is like a mountain of finest rose gold. In my dream he patted my head, and I awoke then, full of joy. A pure-bodied goddess named Light of Delight, who had been a companion in the past, told me the Buddha was here, staying at the supreme site of enlightenment. I had been thinking before that I wanted to see the Prince Lord of Glory, and I was told by the goddess I would see the Prince soon. Now I have seen the Buddha in a dream, and have seen you, the perfect man. My wish is fulfilled, and I am happy. With you now I will honor that supreme sage. Then the prince, having heard the name of the Buddha Supreme Sun and having thus gotten the opportunity to see the Buddha, became very joyful. He showered the maid splendor of delight in virtuous conduct with 500 jewels, gave her a shining crown of jewels, and covered her with a precious robe the color of fire blazing with jewels. And she, thus honored, neither rejoiced nor wept, nor did anything but gaze steadily at the prince with palms joined in respect. Then the prominent courtesan Beautiful spoke these verses to the prince. For a long dark time I have wished to give this girl to you. Now this beautiful maiden of virtue and quality is yours. There is no girl in the world equal to her, much less superior. By virtue of her conduct, intellect, and other qualities, she is the best of women in the world. Born of a lotus, there is no question of her class. She cannot be called impure. Her mind is free from the taint of all faults. She is capable of sharing your practice. Her limbs are extremely soft, conveying the finest pleasures of touch. The sick are instantly cured by her touch. The pure fragrance of her body excels all the finest perfumes. All men who smell it become pure in conduct. Her body shines like gold, undefiled like a lotus. Angry and cruel people become kind when they have seen her. She speaks kindly, sweetly, pleasantly, a delight to people who hear. When they have heard her, the darkness of evil disperses, and none wants to do anything bad. Her mind is pure, her heart untainted. There is no guile at all in her. What she says is just what she thinks, and thus she makes people happy. She does not fool anyone by deceit, nor does she lead people on for gain. She is modest and discreet, always respectful to old and young. She is not fascinated by class or looks or followers. She has no conceit or arrogance. She is always humble toward all. Then the prince and the maid, with her retinue of 20,000 girls, left the park and went to the site of enlightenment where the Buddha was, to see, pay respects to, make offerings to, and attend the Buddha. Going by vehicle as far as the vehicle would go, the prince got off the vehicle and approached the Buddha on foot. Even at a distance he saw that the Buddha was serene, a sight to behold, senses tranquil, mind quiet, senses under control, like a tame elephant, his heart like a clear, still pond. When he saw the Buddha, the prince's mind became settled, and with a clear mind he developed great joy, well-being, and energy that derives from seeing a Buddha. With his mind full of great joy, energy, serenity, and rapture, he paid his respects to the Buddha, and together with his whole company, including the young woman, covered the Buddha with 500,000 great jewel lotuses, and made 500 sanctuaries of jewels for the Buddha, and adorned each one with 500,000 diamonds. Then the Buddha, knowing the prince's strong determination, expounded a scripture called Lamp at the Door of the Universal Light, upon hearing which the prince attained 10 oceans of concentrations absorbed in all principles of the teaching. He attained ways of concentration such as those called light produced from the oceans of vows of all Buddhas, path of illumination of past, present, and future, going forth into the circle of all Buddhas, entry into the highest range of awareness of all beings, attainment of the scope of knowledge of the causes that produce all worlds, lamp illumining the oceans of faculties of all beings, cloud of knowledge to save all beings, lamp leading to the development and emancipation of all beings, communicating the cycles of teaching of all Buddhas, and multitude of undertakings to purify the practices of universal good. Beginning with these, the prince attained 10 oceans of concentrations absorbed in all the principles of the teaching. The young woman attained a meditation called filled with an ocean of invincible knowledge and became irreversible in progress toward supreme perfect enlightenment. Then the prince, paying respects to the Buddha, left the presence of the Buddha with the young woman and the rest of the company and went to his father, the king, in the city. Greeting the king respectfully, he informed him that the Buddha Supreme Son had appeared in the world and was staying in the king's realm, having recently attained enlightenment. The king then asked the prince who had told him so, and he replied that it had been the young woman's splendor of delight in virtuous conduct. Then the king, hearing of the emergence of the Buddha, felt that he had gained a great treasure, felt that he had found the rare jewel of Buddha. He considered the sight of a Buddha to be the end of the danger of falling into evil ways. He felt he had found a great physician who could heal all afflictions. He thought of the Buddha as a liberator from all the sufferings of the mundane world, as one who leads to ultimate peace and felicity, as one who reveals the unobscured light of knowledge. He thought of the Buddha as the appearance of a great torch dispelling the darkness of ignorance, and felt that he had found a spiritual guide for a world with no guide, thinking of the Buddha as a leader to omniscience for the leaderless. Hearing of the emergence of the Buddha with great joy, the King Lord of Wealth gathered together all the warriors, priests, townspeople, ministers, family priests, princes, and governors, as well as the gatekeepers and courtiers, and abdicated the throne in favor of his son Lord of Glory, who had brought the joyous news of the appearance of the Buddha. Then, having crowned the prince as king, he went together with 10,000 people to the Buddha, paid his respects, and sat with his retinue before the Buddha. Then the Buddha, looking at the king and the whole assembly, emitted a light from the curl of hair between his brows, a light called lamp of the minds of all beings, which illumined all worlds in the 10 directions, then stopped in front of all the world leaders, displayed inconceivable Buddha projections, clarified the minds of those beings who could be taught by the Buddha, and then, by the inconceivable mastery of Buddha, by means of embodiment of Buddha appearing in all worlds, speaking all languages in the voice of Buddha, expounded a medium of mental command called unshaded lamp of meaning of all things, which was accompanied by as many media of mental command as atoms in a Buddha land. The King Lord of Wealth, hearing of this medium of mental command, gained an immense spiritual perspective on all things. As many enlightening beings there as atoms in the continent attained the mental command of the unshaded lamp of meaning of all things. 60 million people, freed from contaminations, were mentally liberated. 10,000 people became dispassionate and untinted, and their objective vision of things was clarified. An immense number aspired to supreme perfect enlightenment for the first time. Infinitely many beings in the 10 directions, by seeing the inconceivable mystic displays projected by the Buddha, reached liberation by way of the 3 vehicles. The King Lord of Wealth, having gained great illumination from the teaching, thought, I cannot apply myself assiduously to such a teaching or accomplish such knowledge while living at home. Let me leave home to be with the Buddha. Then he told the Buddha he wanted to receive the precepts from the Buddha and leave home to become a mendicant. The Buddha assented to this. So then the king and 10,000 of his people left home to follow the Buddha. Not long after leaving home, he accomplished the mental command of the unshaded lamp of meaning of all things, along with its subsidiaries, and attained that many concentrations. He also attained 10 mystic knowledges of enlightening beings and plunged into infinite oceans of analytic knowledge. He also attained a purity of body called unhindered sphere of action and going to see the Buddhas of the 10 directions. He received the teaching of the Buddha, preserved it, and preached it, having become a great spiritual preacher and a practitioner of the teaching. By the power of attainment of mystic knowledge, he pervaded the whole world, appearing to people according to their mentalities, telling them of the emergence of the Buddha, illuminating the nature that produces all Buddhas, explaining the accomplishment of the past practices of the Buddha, praising the miraculous power of the Buddha, supporting the Buddha's teaching. As for the new king, the son of Lord of Wealth, on that very day, the time of the full moon, he obtained the 7 treasures of kingship. As he was sitting in the upper palace surrounded by a group of women, there appeared a great disk called unobstructed momentum, adorned with 100,000 jewels, made of gold, shining all over, perfectly formed. There also appeared a great elephant named Diamond Mountain Blaze. There also appeared a horse named Swift as the Wind in the Mountains. There also appeared a great jewel called Supreme Cluster of Sunlight. There also appeared the young woman Splendor of Delight in Virtuous Conduct, to be his treasure of a wife. There also appeared a treasurer named Mass of Abundant Wealth. There also appeared a military leader, the seventh treasure, called Untinted Eye. Endowed with these 7 treasures, he became king, sovereign, ruler of the 4 continents, just, commander of the law, victorious, with the power and vigor of the people. He also had a full 1,000 sons, strong and valiant, destroyers of enemy armies. Under his just rule the earth was free from war, free from evil, free from calamity, prosperous, peaceful, pleasant, and well populated. In each of the 84,000 main cities on the continent, he had 500 sanctuaries built, complete with all the finest features, equipped with all utensils, supplies, and facilities, adorned with gardens, buildings, promenades, and delightful groves. In each sanctuary he also had Buddha memorials built, high and wide, adorned with many arrays of jewels. And he invited the Buddha Supreme Son to all those cities, where he presented the Buddha with inconceivable offerings of all kinds. The miracle of the entry of the Buddha into the cities fostered virtue in innumerable people, and all those with disturbed minds attained tranquility, while those with calm minds developed the intense joy of seeing the Buddha. Those who were full of joy attained purity of will for enlightenment, while those whose will for enlightenment was pure developed great compassion. Those of good will became involved in the quest for all Buddha teachings, while those who knew the principles of the Buddha teaching set their minds to meditation on the intrinsic nature of all things. Those who had realized the equality of things set their minds on realizing the equality of past, present, and future. Those who had attained the scope of knowledge of past, present, and future entered into the light of knowledge of the succession of all Buddhas, while those who had entered the knowledge of various manifestations of Buddhas set their minds on the ovation of all sentient beings. Those engaged in the salvation of all beings vowed to complete the path of enlightening beings, while those who had realized the equanimity of the path generated the light of knowledge to bring forth the cycles of teaching of all Buddhas. Those who were ready for the guidance of the ocean of teaching set their minds on pervading the network of all lands with their own bodies, while those who realized the equality of lands undertook to know the faculties of all sentient beings, and those engaged in consideration of the faculties of all sentient beings in accord with their inclinations purified the determination to reach omniscience. Entering into the fulfillment of such benefits for such people, the King Lord of Glory had the Buddha Supreme Son enter all the cities, to develop and guide those people by the inconceivable vision of the miracles of the Buddha. Now, who do you think that Prince Lord of Glory was? You should see him as none other than this Buddha Shakyamuni, who at that time was a prince named Lord of Glory, who attained kingship, and was on good terms with the Buddha Supreme Son. And who do you think the King Lord of Wealth, father of Lord of Glory, was? You should see him as none other than the Buddha Jewel Flower Light, who at that time was a king named Lord of Wealth, who attained supreme perfect enlightenment at an enlightenment site symbolized by reflection of the moon, and expounded the teachings surrounded by as many enlightening beings as atoms in untold Buddha lands in a world called Shining Lamp of the Aura of Buddha, in a world system called Family, born of a diamond reflecting past, present, and future in the center of an ocean of worlds called multitude of reflections in the space of the cosmos of realities, which was to the east past as many oceans of worlds as atoms in a world. Furthermore, that ocean of worlds, multitude of reflections in the space of the cosmos of realities, was purified by that Buddha jewel flower light in the course of his past practice as an enlightening being, and all the past, present, and future Buddhas in that ocean of worlds were ripened for supreme perfect enlightenment by that Buddha jewel flower light as he carried out the practice of enlightening beings. Now then, who do you think was the Queen Lotus born in that time, mother of the Prince Lord of Glory, foremost of the 84,000 women? You should see her as none other than Lady Maya, mother of the blessed Buddha, progenitrix of the enlightening being Vairochana, established in unobstructed liberation of universal light, direct witness to the appearance of the countless multitude of all Buddhas, who knows the manner of manifestation of birth of all enlightening beings. And who do you think was the great courtesan beautiful? You should see her as Sutra, wife of Dandapani of the Shakya clan, who is my mother. And who was her daughter, Splendor of Delight in Virtuous Conduct? You should see her as me. Who do you think were the retinue of the King Lord of Wealth? They were these enlightening beings seated here in this assembly, guided by the Buddha to the fulfillment of the vows of universally good action, with a body reflected in all worlds, mind unadulterated and unfragmented in all concentration states of enlightening beings, eyes seeing the being and countenance of all Buddhas, ears hearing the utterances of all Buddhas, breath in control of all spiritual stations, voice going to all Buddha lands, the body of an enlightening being ceaselessly going to the audiences of all Buddhas, entering the network of all places by production of embodiments suitable to develop and guide according to the mentalities of those to whom the enlightening beings appear, arriving at fulfillment of the vows of practice of universal good unbroken throughout the ages. The King Lord of Glory and I, furthermore, attended the Buddha Supreme Son as long as he lived, providing him with the necessities of life. After that Buddha passed away entirely, a Buddha named Pure Body emerged, in that same world, and we honored and served him. After that we served, in succession, Buddhas named Moon reflecting knowledge in all limbs, King of golden light, adorned with marks of greatness, Moon blazing with a web of brilliant light beams, Paragon of observant knowledge, King illumined with great knowledge, adamantine energy, invincible power of knowledge, all-observing knowledge, Cloud of pure light, crown blazing with lights of knowledge, banner of lights of virtue, energy of the sun of knowledge, limbs like blooming jewel lotuses, lamp of felicity, radiance of multitudes of rays of knowledge, moon shining everywhere, powerful lion illumined by universal knowledge, moon of cosmic mind, reflection in the space-like mind of beings, tranquil and well-balanced, ubiquitous sound of silence, cluster of images in a network of light rays of stable knowledge, radiance of the mountain of immortality, thunder of the ocean of truths, crown of light in the sky of Buddhas, moon of light beams, face of complete knowledge, luster of flowers of pure knowledge, glorious light of a mountain of jewel flowers, light of myriad stars of virtue, knowledge emerging from the heights of concentration, jewel moon, circle of flames, sublime jewel radiance, unhesitating in practice of universal knowledge, blazing lamp topped with a sea of flames, king proclaiming the mansion of truth, famed for peerless virtue, moon reflecting past vows, lamp of meaning with space-alike knowledge, lord of the sky, born of truth, king filled with shining light, paragon of spirituality, chief in knowledge, lotus in the ocean of truth. Beginning with these, there were 60 decillion Buddhas in that world whom we honored, served, and provided with food and clothing, medicine and furniture. The last of those 60 decillion Buddhas was one named Energy, born of great zeal for truth. When that Buddha came to town, I, as wife of the king, together with my husband, made all kinds of offerings and then heard an exposition of the teaching from the Buddha called lamp, produced by the emergence of all those who arrive at thusness, on hearing which I attained the eye of knowledge, and attained this enlightening liberation whose sphere is observation of the oceans of concentrations of all enlightening beings. Continue to video 34.